Hi, folks. I'm very excited to be here today and share with you some of the process improvements we are putting in place on the Angular side. Partially because it's going to help my team and myself, and more importantly, because it's also going to make your experience with Angular better, and also enable you to get your issues and contributions addressed in a more efficient manner. A lot of what I'm going to be saying today and talking about is not very Angular specific. These are good practices and things you can actually use on your other projects as well. So a bit of an intro about myself. I joined the Angular core team at Google in October 2017. I lead technical program management for Angular. And I'm passionate about full stack web development, agile, and lean methods. That's been my area of focus in the past, and the ones that I'm passionate about. OK, Angular, 1,419 contributors. We almost have 600 releases so far, 1,900 commits, and slightly shy of 30,000 closed issues, and 19,000 pull requests. And that's only framework, material, and CLI. I haven't even counted all the other repos that are part of the ecosystem. So let's put that in perspective. What that actually translates to is we do 4 releases, 127 commits, and 122 pull requests every single week. That's pretty amazing. And it also highlights the fact that managing an open source project is hard. Managing a popular and high-velocity open source project is harder. Successful open source projects, and all good products in general, have the following attributes in common. They all start off with a clear vision. You have been hearing about new capabilities with Ivy, some of the new use cases that Ivy enables, built like Google with Bazel, and a lot of coolness that's coming out that's on the horizon. Good products also have a sustainable process and execution strategy, so we can realize the vision, rather than just rely on best intentions. Lastly, perception is largely a byproduct of how well we do the above, of how well we execute the vision and have the supporting processes to actually realize it, in addition to other things such as community and documentation that contribute towards the overall perception of the product. So my talk will focus on the process and execution piece. It's a topic that I deeply care about, and it's also very important as Angular grows as a community. I want to make it easier for you to get your issues resolved and be able to contribute to Angular. Specifically, there are 3 things that I want to talk about today: issues, contributions that culminate in pull requests, and how it all comes together through the development process. Those are 3 things that I want to talk about today. Process is one of those things we strive to continuously improve. We definitely have a lot of work that remains to be done. But we've made great progress, and it's mind-blowing to see how far we've come along the last few months, especially. So I'm going to approach each of these areas from 2 angles. One is I'll talk about improvements we're making to each of these areas, and then I'll also provide you some insight into the process. All right, let's dive right in and talk about issues. So I've found a bug. So how many people here, I'm just curious, have actually filed an issue report with Angular? It could be a bug report, it could be a feature request, or anything. OK, I have a few people there. So I found a bug. I need to go to production with my application in just a few weeks. The pressure's mounting. I just updated to the latest version of Angular, and I've run into an issue. In panic, I head over to GitHub, quickly type up an issue report. I also cut and paste 15,000 lines of my production application code into the report and submit the report. And I keep my fingers crossed, hoping that somebody from the community or the Angular core team will actually be able to look at it and help me out. There's more than one thing wrong with this approach, and with this report in particular. You'll also notice that I've logged the defect in the wrong project in CLI instead of framework. That's one thing that's wrong about it. But more importantly, the biggest thing that's wrong about this is that it is not actionable. and will most likely get closed by the reviewer. So the point here is that putting time up front and doing some due diligence will really help us help you. So what are some of the things that you can do, and how do you create a bug report that developers will love you for? So the first thing you can do is to do a search on GitHub to see if the issue has actually been reported. By default, and I have a little screen capture here, GitHub looks only at the open issues, but it would be in your best interest to expand your search to the closed issues as well, because sometimes you may find valuable workarounds, known problems, and other useful commentary in those closed issues. So it'll really be in your best interest to take a look at that first. If an issue is already open, please don't duplicate it. Instead, add any pertinent information to the issue. That's just going to help us get to the bottom of the problem faster. If you don't find an open issue, or if your issue is different in scope, let's say it's got a larger scope than what was previously reported, sure, it makes sense for you to proceed and go to the next step. Second thing you want to ensure is whether it's really a bug. It's actually quite surprising. Many a time when I think I've found a bug, I only realized that it was a user error or a misunderstanding of the capabilities on my part, or even an environmental issue. So you want to really make sure it is a bug. And if you're not sure, we have some helpful communities. So you can go on Gitter. There are about 17,800 people, a lot of useful members, a lot of very helpful members on Gitter that answer questions and stay active. Use the resource. Alternatively, you can ask on Stack Overflow as well, if you're not really sure and want to get validation before you go ahead and log the issue. The third thing you can do before you actually file a bug report is to create a minimal reproduction of the issue. So this will help crystallize everything before you actually spend the time writing a bug report. So we just released a new Stackblitz template for you to create a minimal reproduction. In fact, this was released, I think, a day ago. So if you go to our new issue templates, you'll find this link from there. The template is actually pretty simple. So it's a single component, inline markup, use basically inline markup with a single template. Also in the index.html file, we have a few things for you to fill out. So two things we ask for are step-by-step instructions. I filled out this text box, I selected this value from the drop-down, I click on Show Me, and I get this error. So very specific instructions that will enable the reader to sort of reproduce the issue. The second thing we also ask for is the expected and actual behavior right in the template. Right? So you see your reproduction, and right below it is the actual details of the error. Right? The index.html file also has some general guidance in terms of what constitutes a minimum viable reproduction. And that basically means code, markup, and styling absolutely required to reproduce the issue. In other words, every single line of code you provide must be executed to be able to reproduce the issue. That is a minimum viable reproduction. The template should work for the lion's share of the cases. If not, feel free to extend it, but I think this should work for most people. This is just the instructions in the next file. You would basically delete the general guidance and put in the information that we ask for. OK, now you're ready to create a bug report. Like I previously mentioned, we used to have one-size-fits-all, basically. It was one template where you would go and essentially create a bug report or a feature request or what have you. So a day ago, we took advantage of this new capability, and we released this new set of templates that essentially provide a more intuitive experience for you, and we can ask for relevant information depending on what you choose. Right? So this will also help process the issues more efficiently for us, because what we ask for a bug is quite different to what we ask for a feature request. So this will help in that regard. OK, so you've done your due diligence. You've created a minimal reproduction. You've logged the issue. What happens next? So we actually go through a two-level triaging process. And triaging basically means we categorize and rationalize the issues so we can focus on the most important work. So we go through a two-level triage process. We assign a bunch of metadata that helps tell us which component the issue is related to. what's the type, severity, and frequency, and what have you. So once triaged, the issues actually get on a backlog, at which point they're ready to be scheduled to be worked on. So this is the backlog of the issues, where we compute a priority score, that's the leftmost column, based on the metadata we use in the triaging process. And that's where the issues basically land up once we triage them. OK, moving along. So that's the first thing I wanted to share with you about issues. And then now I'd like to switch gears and talk a little bit about contributions that culminate in a pull request. So giving back to the community that we take so much from, right? Contributions don't just have to be code. I want to get that out of the way. So improving documentation, answering a community member's question, giving somebody a workaround are all perfect examples of fine contributions, right? So these are all contributions that help make Angular better. So why would you want to contribute? It's empowering. You're making your life better and the life of others better as well, and you're influencing the product quality and the roadmap. You advance your skills. You get valuable feedback on your code and artifacts from some of the best minds on the planet. You also build yourself an awesome profile, right? So good work gets noticed pretty quickly. You can find a mentor depending on what your advancement goals are. We are a large community, you can find a mentor. And you can be a mentor yourself. So being a contributor is just gratifying. So there are some contributor artifacts that I quickly wanted to point your attention to. The first one is the README file. That's a good starting point, especially if you're new to contributing. It welcomes new members on how to get started and helps you figure out how you find your way around Angular. There's also a document called Contributing, and all of these documents are available at the root level of the repository. This contains more information about the processes and artifacts to be aware of if you're a contributor. For example, we have a contributor licensing agreement and talks about things like that and other things as well. Code of conduct, this was mentioned and highlighted in the keynote as well. I can't stress this enough. We live and breathe this every day. We take it very seriously. It hinges on our core principles of respect, integrity, and fair play. All communications on GitHub are subject to a code of conduct. And like any virtual communication medium, before we react, we should consider possible interpretations, language barriers, and so on. So that's always a good thing to keep in mind as we communicate virtually. So Igor in the keynote yesterday also talked about excellent interactions, and we strive for excellent interaction in every single touch point we have with the community. We also have other supporting resources on Angular.io where you can get information about how we do our releases, a release cadence, long-term support. So you can get a bunch of other information that also will help you with your contributions. OK, GitHub also has two other labels. One is a good first issue, especially geared towards first-time contributors, and then help wanted. These are issues that we explicitly ask for help. We haven't been really good about using these, but we're just starting to. So keep an eye out for this. And the nice thing is this is integrated with GitHub tooling. So this should show up on your user dashboard or the search pages or topic pages. All right, so your contribution culminates in pull request if it's a documentation or a code contribution. So at this point, your changes will get reviewed. Any potential modifications will be discussed with the reviewers. Follow-up commits, will be made as necessary. So what happens after you submit a pull request? We go through a similar triaging process that we have for bugs, except the metadata we use is a little bit different because it's a pull request instead. And once the pull requests are triaged, it actually gets on the backlog just like we do with bugs. I also want to call your attention to two validations that we do with pull requests. It's kind of been a black box, so I just want to shed some light on the couple of things that we do with respect to validations. So one is, we have continuous integration through Circle and Travis CI. So linting, type checking, we build, we run tests that we have written. And really the goal is to surface any problems before you run into them. That's really the goal of that CI. In addition, we also have a Google validation step that you might have seen on the pull request detail screens. This is where we actually validate the changes you have made against Google applications. And this helps you get your first real validation in the real world. How cool is that? That's how a typical triage session on the Angular core team looks like, and that's Mishko sitting right up in the front. He needs no introduction. This is a dedicated time where we lock ourselves in a room and we look at issues and PRs twice a week, and we do it every single week. The other thing we also have done is to get some automation going, because a lot of this triaging entails going through a workflow of activities. So we have developed a Probot-based GitHub robot to automate some of the manual tasks. So it triages PRs and issues by assigning various milestones. That helps with the workflow and helps move things along. It also performs various checks on the PR and updates the overall merge summary status. And it also computes size changes resulting from a PR. So you submit a PR, it compares it with the baseline that we previously know from the master branch, and reports if your change will actually increase the overall size, if it's going to decrease it, or if it's going to keep it unchanged. So it does all of those things and really helps us out as we put this process together. OK, so we've looked at how issues and PRs get triaged and make it to a prioritized backlog. What happens after this? So the product backlog is comprised of the bug backlog that we talked about. It's also comprised of the pull request backlog that we talked about, which gets prioritized. We looked at that. And then we have release-level features, technical debt, what have you. So all of these things get into a product backlog. They get rationalized. They get groomed on a weekly basis. And we run 2-week sprints. So at sprint planning, we look at the product backlog. We look at the topmost priorities there. We look at our velocity. We bite off a chunk from the product backlog. And we essentially do our sprint planning based on that, where we do a task breakdown, and we execute on them for 2 weeks. We also have daily stand-ups, and we also have mid-sprint check-in meetings. We have that cadence going on. And the sprint results in a potentially shippable release increment. And we conclude the sprint with an end-of-sprint review and a retrospective. Like I said, we do this every 2 weeks, and then we rinse and repeat. So in summary, and I'd like to keep this short, I hope I gave you some insight into the process we use for Angular, for bugs, PRs, and some of the improvements we have made, which will hopefully make your experience better. There's more work to be done, and it's one of those things we continuously strive to improve and iterate on. But I really feel good about the progress we have made thus far with the whole process. Now, we have this in place. Numbers are not going to change overnight. We will keep executing on this over a period of time, and then we should actually start seeing the counts drop. But we have everything that's needed to actually make that happen. And if you have any feedback, suggestions on things we can be doing differently, any pain points you have, or how we can make things better, come see me at the conference, or you can reach out to me on Twitter anytime. Definitely would love to hear your feedback. Thank you for the opportunity, and have a great rest of your conference. Thanks very much.